Now that you have your supplies, go ahead and tear out 4 pages from your book of choice. Next, you're going to fold them to the edge of the paper. Take up the whole piece, just like this. Don't need to concern yourself with the bottom half. Go ahead and take all the pieces of paper, all 4, fold them over to the full length of the page. Now you're going to go ahead and cut off that extra piece. Be sure to save that because you can use it for leaves later if you so choose. Now go ahead and fold it again in half with the edges all along. Here I went ahead and divided it into 2. It's a little easier to fold if you have only 2 pieces of paper. You're going to go ahead and fold it in half again. And then in half again. To make a triangle. Now you want to make sure that all of the folded lines there are showing at the top. Now you're going to cut out your design for your leaves. So go ahead, for your petals, I'm sorry. So I do just a little jaggedy line, look more like a rose, and then come down, just trim that off a little bit. I'm going to open it up and see how deep my cuts go, because I want a little bit more distance between the petals, so I'm just going to cut those a little bit more. And now here I have both of those are done now. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the next 2 pages. Folding it again in half and in half again. Cutting out the petal shape, and it doesn't have to be exact, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same, because no roses petals are exactly the same. I needed a little more distance on this one, so I'm just cutting it down a little bit. And there we go. So now I have 4 pieces cut out with the petals. Now I'm going to go ahead and curl the edges ahead of time. It's much easier. I like to use the skewer. It just makes it just a little easier. And I'm just going to roll the edges. Whether you do it down or up, doesn't matter. And you're just going to roll them, each one. Doesn't have to be exact, and it doesn't have to be very tight. Just enough to get a little bit of curl. There you go. I'm going to go ahead and do that to all 4 pages. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and cut them. So there's a very specific way we want to do this. The first sheet of paper, we want to cut only 1 petal out. So 1 triangle. I'm going to go ahead and pick any random one. It doesn't really matter. And that's all I'm cutting out of that first sheet. So that will be the first and the last pieces, basically. Now I'm going to cut 2 petals out. That's all I'm cutting out of that sheet. The next one, I'm going to be cutting 3. 1, 2, 3. And that's all I'm cutting out of that one. You can kind of see a pattern. Now the 4th one, I'm going to cut directly in half. So we have 2 equal of 4. And those are all of our petals. making sure that my hot glue gun is hot. So now I'm going to take and make sure that the petals are curled out away underneath. I'm going to cut that about 3/4 of the way. I'm going to glue it about 3/4 of the way over. Now I want to attach it to the stem right away. I'm just going to poke that through and add some hot glue. I do this so that it makes it easier later. Sometimes it's very hard to poke the stem all the way through all the layers of paper. So I just do this ahead of time, and I'm just kind of making the glue just nice and gooey on the inside and the outside of the stem. Now on this one I am using a wired stem. Sometimes I use the skewers, just depending on what I'm doing and what I'm going to be affixing it to. So now with the next page, where we had taken 2 out, I am going to put the glue, just a little bit of glue over and about 3/4, and then poke a hole through the bottom. Put a little glue in the base of that one. Not a big enough hole, so I'm using the skewer or the end of the stem, your choice. And I'm just gonna slide that on, which you can't see off camera. Didn't realize that was happening. And then I am just pushing it down into the glue that I have put in there. Now I just want to make sure that the petals are just off center just a little bit, so that there is just not lined up exactly. Now we're taking the one with the 3 petals cut off and gluing that 3/4. Taking my skewer, poking a hole, fitting it onto my stem. And then putting a little hot glue under there, aimed near the base. Again, pushing it down, making sure the petals are just off a little bit. And getting rid of all the spider webs from the glue. Now I'm going to take the half one and I'm going to put just a little bit of glue, and I'm going to do almost, again, 3/4 on that one. Put a little glue back in the center and slip that on to the stem, pushing it into the glue. As you can see, now we grab the next one. This is important. You want to make sure since those 2 are exactly the same, you want to make them slightly different. So on this time, I went all the way. So I made it a 3-petal instead of a 4-petal. And then just fit it in, because it needs to fit on the inside of the other one. So it either needs to be much smaller or a little smaller. So then I'm putting the glue in and then just poking it down. So now we're going to work on the very center. So you could leave it like that if you wanted, but I like it to be complete. So I like to have a nice tight center. So while Oh, and I noticed that there are a few petals that need to be reshaped a little bit. It's coming together quite nicely. I'm just fussing with the petals because once I finish putting in the center, I walk away. I'm done. Or I could sit and fiddle with it forever. So now I'm going to take the one single petal and I'm going to gently fold that over. Sometimes I like to glue them together, but I decided not to on this one. So I'm just folding that over with a slight bend to it. So they look like petals, just pushing down the glue. Nice and gentle so I don't burn myself like I just did. Waiting for that to dry up enough. Okay, so that's the very center of the flower. Now I'm gonna wrap it around the center nice and slow. We want to get a nice little bend to the petals. Just like that. And you just keep wrapping it around until you come around, and then just a dab of glue. Press it down. But you want those pages to bend over on that petal. Now you do the same thing with the next layer. Just gently folding it around. I feel like I need a little glue here just to keep it in place. And then I'm just wrapping it around. And this is also how you can make like a bud. Just take those 3 pieces and make bud flowers. If you just need some small buds. Now, the one thing I have found through trial and error is that this is going to be too long as is to fit in the center of my flower and not have it look weird. And here, I'll show you what that looks like. See how it just sticks up too high? So I find that if I cut the end off about a finger's length, it usually about does it. And then I stick it on top of the wire and push it in. Do I like that? Does it stick up enough but not too much? Yes, yes I do. So now I get my glue and I put the glue in. And then I just press it right into the center. And there we have it. There is our paper rose. Very pretty.